Hello everyone, my name is Ngọc, and today I will talk about French quarters. First, I will briefly present about Vietnam and France. After that, I will summarize the domestic and international historical background leading to the French invasion and colonization of Vietnam. Firstly, the decision to invade Vietnam was made by Napoleon III in the July 1857. It was the result not only for missionary propaganda, but also after 1850 of the upsurge of French capitalism, which generated the need for overseas market and the desire for a larger French share of the Asian territories conquered by the West. The naval commander in East Asian, along an advocate of French military action against Vietnam, was ordered to attack the harbor and city of Da Nang and to turn it into French military base. Vietnamese resistance prevented the French from advancing beyond Saigon, and it took French troops under new command until 1861 to occupy the three provinces. The Vietnamese, unable to mount effective resistance to invaders and their advanced weapons, conclude a peace treaty in June 1862, which ceded the conquered territories to the French. 5 years later, additional territories in the south were placed under French rule. The entire colony was named Cochinchina. It had taken France slightly more than 8 years to make themselves master of Cochinchina. It took them 16 more years to extend their control over the rest of the country, and they make a first attempt to the Red River Delta in 1873 after the French naval officer and explorer named Francis Garnier had shown in a hazardous expedition that the Mekong River could not serve as a trade route into southwestern China. Garnier had some support from the French governor of Cochinchina, but when he was killed in a battle with Chinese pirates near Hanoi, the attempt to conquer the north collapsed. Within a decade, France had returned to the challenge. In April 1882, with the blessing of Paris, the administration at Saigon sent a force of 215 men to Hanoi under Captain Henry Riviere. When Henry was killed in a skirmish, Paris moved to impose its rule by force over the entire Red River Delta. In August 1883, the Vietnamese court signed a treaty that turned northern Vietnam, named Ton Kỳ by France, and central Vietnam, named An Nam, based on an early Chinese name for the region, into French protectorate. 10 years later, French annexed Laos and added it to so-called Indo-Chinese Union, which French created in 1887. The union consists of the colony of Cochinchina and the four protectorates of An Nam, Đông Kinh, Cambodia, and Laos. What did French colonists do in Vietnam and the Vietnamese people? How did the action affect Vietnamese society and Vietnamese people? Were there any accidentally good things that French colonizers did in Vietnam? To answer this question, I would say that French colonial period brought profound social and cultural change to Vietnam. Western education system was introduced, promoting the French language and culture while marginalizing traditional Vietnamese education. This led to the emergence of a new class structure with a small Western educated elite who often served as intermediaries between French and the local population. Urban areas like Hanoi and Saigon saw a significant change in lifestyle and fashion, adapting to Western style and custom. This city also experienced urban development, with French architecture influence evident in many buildings. The period saw the rise of Vietnamese intellectual and political elite who would later play crucial in the resistance against colonial rule. In summary, while French colonialism left a physical and cultural imprint on Vietnam, the deeper impact was the galvanization of a nationalist movement and the strengthening of a cultural identity that resisted a complete assimilation. This complex legacy continues to influence Vietnamese trajectory in its domestic policy and its approach to global engagement. Now I will briefly present the 1954 Geneva Conference, the background, the signatories, and the provision. What countries decide to divide Vietnam at the 17th parallel? The agreement concluded in Geneva between April and July 1954 was signed by French and Viet Minh representatives and provide a ceasefire and temporary division of the country into two military zones at latitude 17. All Viet Minh forces were to withdraw north of that line, and all French and Associated States of Vietnam troops were to remain south of it. Permission was granted for refuge to move from one zone to the other during a limited time period. An international commission was established composed of Canadian, Polish, and Indian members under the Indian chairman to supervise the execution of the agreement. So there are some countries supported Vietnam during the struggle against French. The vivid example in international support for Vietnam was the solidarity of the people of the three Indochinese countries in the fight against the common enemy. They create the most favorable conditions for each other to make the resistance war successful. In Southeast Asia, Myanmar was among the first countries to establish friendship ties with the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. In 1947, Vietnam set up its first liaison agency in Saigon. In 1948, the two sides agreed to upgrade the liaison agency into Information Dissemination Office to promote dissemination, publish Vietnam News Agency bulletin in more foreign countries, and promptly send international news home to serve the direction on the resistance war. Thailand is also get early and effective support to Vietnam under leadership of the Prime Minister Pridi. The Thai government shows strong support and trust in Vietnam. They create job opportunities for tens of thousands of overseas Vietnamese. They also lend for Vietnamese to build guerrilla base, equip some small Vietnamese units with weapons to help them fight against the French colonizers when they return home. After China officially established diplomatic relation with the Democratic Republic of Vietnam on January 18 of 1950, the Soviet Union and other socialist countries in turn recognized and formed the same ties with the country. Since then, China, the Soviet Union, and other socialist countries start giving support and providing aid, including material and equipment for Vietnam resistance war. Now I will move on to Hoa Lo prison, and after that I will tell you about Vietnam and China. And finally, I will tell you about Joseph Cathedral and religion in Vietnam. Now, come back to Hoa Lo prison. I will make the general introduction of Hoa Lo prison, the construction and the historical background that led to the construction of the prison, and the structure of the prison, the function of the jail in different periods to this day. Hoa Lo prison was a prison in Hanoi, originally used by the French colonizers in Indochina for political prisoners, and later by North Vietnam for U.S. prisoners of war during Vietnam War. During this later period, it was known to American prison of wars as Hanoi Hilton. Following Operation Homecoming, the prison was used to incarcerate Vietnamese dissidents until its demolition between 1993 and 1994. It guest house remains a museum. The prison was built in Hanoi by the French between 1896 and 1901. When Vietnam was still part of French Indochina, the French called the prison Maison Centrale, the Central House, which is the destination of prison for dangerous or long sentence detainees in French. It was located near Hanoi French Quarter. It was intended to hold Vietnamese prisoners, particularly political prisoners, agitating for the independence, who were often subject to torture and executions. 1930 renovation expanded its capacity from 416 inmates to 600. It was nevertheless often overcrowded, holding some 713 prisoners on a given day. In 1960, a figure which rose to about 900 in 1922 and 1,413 in 1933. By 1954, it held more than 2,000 people, with its inmates held in subhuman conditions. It had become a symbol of colonizers' exploitation and the bitterness of the Vietnamese towards the French. The prison continued to be used after the release of the American prisoners. Among the last inmates was dissident poet Nguyễn Chí Thiện, who was re-imprisoned in 1979 after attempting to deliver his poems to the British embassy, and spent 6 years in Hoa Lo until 1985, when mentioned the last year of the prison, partly in fictional form in Hoa Lo or Hanoi Hilton stories. The prison remained operational until its 1993 demolition. So people would ask, what was the difference between how the French treat Vietnamese political prisoner and Vietnam treat American prisoner of wars? Under French control, Hoa Lo prison became a symbol of colonial oppressions and cruelty. Prisoners were often subject to a cramped, filthy cell with little food or sanitation. Torture methods, including beating, whippings, and prolonged solitary confinement. The notorious guillotine used for public execution for revolutionaries, led cycle and stock, which prevent prisoners from moving or sleeping comfortably. Despite this brutal condition, Hoa Lo also became a center for resistance, with prisoners secretly organizing protests, hunger strike, and escape attempts. Many revolutionaries who later became leaders in Vietnam's independence movement, including figures from the Communist Party of Vietnam, spent time within its goal. About the U.S. prisoner of war in North Vietnam was subjected to extreme torture and malnutrition during their captivity. Although North Vietnam was a signatory of the Third Geneva Convention of 1949, which demanded decent and human treatment of prisoners of war. Self-torture and methods were employed, such as waterboarding, iron beatings, and prolonged solitary confinement. The aim of the torture was usually not acquiring military information, rather it was to break the will of the prisoner of war, both individually as a group. The goal of the North Vietnamese was to get written or record statements from the prisoner that criticized U.S. conduct of the war and praise how the North Vietnamese treat them. Such prisoner of war statement would be viewed as a propaganda victory in the Battle of Square War and used as domestic opinion against the U.S. war effort. Well, now I will move on to Vietnam and the USA. Who or what the referred to as the Viet Cong by the American military. The Viet Cong was an epithet and an umbrella term to refer the communist-driven armed movement and United Front organization in South Vietnam, which was formally organized as led by the National Liberation Front of the South Vietnam and conducted military operations under the name of the Liberation Army of South Vietnam. The movement fought under the direction of North Vietnam against the South Vietnamese and United States governments during the Vietnam War. The organization had both guerrilla and regular army units, as well as a network of cadres who organized and mobilized peasants in the territory the VC controlled. During the war, communist fighters and some anti-war activists claimed that the VC was an insurgency indigenous to the South that represent the legitimate right of people in South Vietnam, while the U.S. and South Vietnamese governments portrayed the group as a tool of North Vietnam. It was later conceded by the modern Vietnamese communist leadership that the movement was actually under the North Vietnamese political and military leadership aimed to unify Vietnam under a single banner. After the event known as the Fall of Saigon, to which country did Vietnamese people vote and geographically who left Vietnam at that time and why did they leave?